This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hey everybody, I'm Dan Mannarino. Welcome to PIX on Politics Daily. We are 2 weeks to the day away from Election Day, right? And of course, we've been laser focused on the two big races, the race for New Jersey governor and the race for New York City mayor. Those are really the two big focuses. And as you've been watching PIX on Politics the last 2 weeks, we've been interviewing the top three candidates, right? We had Andrew Cuomo, then we had Curtis Sliwa. Both of those interviews, the full half-hour episodes posted on pix11.com. What we're doing is asking you at home to continue to send in your questions, and we bring them directly to the candidates. You did a great job with those two. This week, I'm speaking with the Democratic frontrunner, Zohran Mamdani, and that interview taking place on Thursday. We'll air on Friday, but we're going to interview him on Thursday in full transparency. So send me your questions now so I can go through them. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions for Zohran, and we'll bring them directly to him when I sit down with him on Thursday. And while that conversation is playing out, it's going to be the day after the second and final debate, which is taking place Wednesday evening, right? So it's going to be a very interesting conversation. All of this on the heels of a very interesting poll that came out from AARP. And in that poll, it showed that there were 50 plus age group voters who really may decide who is the next mayor of New York City, right? Let me bring in Beth Finkel. She is New York State Director of AARP to talk more about this poll. So Beth, great to see you.
You too, Dan.
Timely poll. And when everybody is laser focused on this race, right? Now, it was no surprise in the poll, I had Zohran Mamdani still holding a very comfortable lead. 43.2% was what he was at, followed by former Governor Andrew Cuomo, 28.9%, Guardian Angels founder. See, sort of a bit of a bump from the last poll that AARP did, 19.4%. And there is this 8% that's undecided, right? So there are the numbers right there on the screen. What did you find when you looked at these numbers?
Well, it's interesting when you talk about the 8% undecided. That's very true. But if you go head to head, it's not an 8% undecided. If it's head to head with Mamdani and Cuomo, it's almost 15% undecided. And the other part that's interesting about that is of the undecided, 78% are 50 and older.
Yeah. I mean, and that just shows the pivotal age group. Now, it's been a lot has been talked about the youth vote and how Zohran Mamdani was able to do something in the primary that other candidates were not able to do, which was to bring out a youth vote of 20 to 30-year-olds. Andrew Cuomo often talks about when I asked him, where did you fall short in the primary? He says, I didn't pay enough attention to the youth vote. That's differing than what you're saying right now, which is the other age group is really maybe the deciding factor if, to what you alluded to, Curtis Sliwa drops out of the race, which is highly, Beth, unlikely. I spoke to him last week. He said he would have to be 6 feet under and turn into a speed bump for him to drop out of the race. And for those at home who are watching right now, there have been these calls in the last 24 hours. John Catsimatidis, a very prominent Republican, he owns WABC Radio, came out and said, drop out of the race. And that is a friend of Curtis Sliwa's. There were these rumors that Ed Cox, the Republican chairman, may have taken a phone call from Donald Trump to tell him to drop out of the race. Curtis says, no matter who calls me, no matter what, I'm not dropping out. But if he did, what do the numbers show in your poll?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting because it's a little over 44% for Mamdani and it's a little over 40% for Cuomo if Sliwa drops out. And our poll had a 4% margin of error, which means it's almost a toss-up at this point.
Right. So it is. And that is something that the New York Post ran with, the Cuomo campaign ran with, saying, well, look, this is getting a lot tighter than anybody expected it to be. It is a huge caveat that Curtis Sliwa would have to drop out of the race for that to be. And what many folks are saying is, and Curtis Sliwa included, if I drop out of the race, is everybody going to wake up the next morning and say, okay, well, I'm automatically going to vote for Andrew Cuomo? The poll doesn't look at that necessarily, right?
Well, it does look at the head-on, one-on-ones. So, yes, the poll does look at that. That's the 44 versus the 40, is if Sliwa drops out, that's what the race looks like, with that almost 15% undecided.
And for those who don't necessarily follow polls, with that 4% plus or minus margin of error, it means that it could really be a head-to-head matchup, like you said. When you look at the poll and the sample that you guys put out there, did it go after youth vote?
We absolutely had it weighted by age group. So, yes.
And so were you able to break down what exactly it showed?
I don't have that number in front of me, but
okay.
Yes, it was weighted, so people can be reassured of that.
And was there any, I guess, overlap in the numbers, meaning that when it was a three-way matchup, that those votes stayed the same from when it became a two-way?
The only thing I can say to you is, this is a tracking poll. We ran it in August. I think you guys covered it then.
Yeah.
And now here we are in October, almost at the election day. And what we've absolutely seen is from the August poll to now, Cuomo's numbers went up 9% in the 50 plus. And again, I keep emphasizing for every race forever that we've been tracking this, 50 plus generally make up 60% or more of the electorate that show up. Yes, that primary was, quite an anomaly, and it's something that we're all watching. But consistently, every election, it's always been the 60 plus. So it's the 50 plus at that 60% rate or more. I can tell you that some boroughs like the Bronx and Staten Island, that number goes up even higher.
Yeah.
So who knows? The youth came out before. I certainly want everyone out to vote. That's what AARP is all about. This is democracy, and we're great that people are getting out there and voting.
Yeah, and that is something that that Andrew Cuomo often says, is that, election day will matter, and who actually shows up to the polls will matter. And yes, senior citizens and those who are 50 plus are known to not like to vote early. They like to traditionally go on election day, vote at the ballot box on election day. You mentioned it being an anomaly. I think what Zohran is saying is, yeah, that's still going to happen, except I'm going to bring out a whole new group of voters that are going to exercise their right as well. When you look at the issues, though, right? All of these candidates now, on Thursday, I will have spoken to all three. We all know that Zohran's running this affordability. I spoke to Curtis and Andrew Cuomo, who talked about affordability. Cost of living really dominating in this poll as well.
Absolutely. It's cost of living. We all know it. We all feel it. And that's not generational, right? I mean, yes, it pops for the older. And I think it pops for older because so many of them are on fixed incomes.
Yeah, I mean, take a look right here. 64% cost of living were the top issues. Public safety was 49%. Housing affordability, 39%. Healthcare concerns, 27%. Was any of that surprising to you?
Yes and no. No to the first three for sure. Healthcare, of course, that falls on the federal side. And I think that's what's missing that we didn't have in this poll, which is with the looming federal budget cuts coming down to the state and the city, the next mayor is going to have to make some very difficult decisions on the budget. And it's really important that he understand the rising demographics of older adults and the fact that only less than 1% of New York City's budget actually goes to older adults. And it's not just about the older adults, right? It's also about the caregivers. If you or I are taking care of a parent or a loved one and we have to be at work and still be worrying, did they get their meal delivered? Do they need transportation to get to the doctor? Right? Those are the things that really make a difference in people's lives and allow people to live with dignity in their homes for as long as possible, which, by the way, saves Medicaid dollars.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about that when you said the federal cuts, you're talking about Medicare, SNAP benefits, Medicaid, so on and so forth.
But we don't know how that's all going to dribble down, right, to our everyday budget.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and what was interesting, too, that the voters who said the city's on the wrong track for a lot of these things actually increased from your August poll. So it went from 52% in August to 55% now. Most respondents saying that they are very optimistic, though, about somebody new. Not obviously the numbers show what they show, but they want new leadership to kind of take over this. What else did it show? Did you guys get into any more issue focused?
Well, it's people are concerned about their communities. We use this term livable communities. What does it mean? Well, we know affordable housing is part of it, but it's also transportation services, which we didn't cover in this. But it's also about the quality of life in your community. What is it really about? How comfortable are you there? Do you see yourself being able to age in place? Look, the last thing the city needs, or the state for that matter, is more people to be leaving the city or the state. And that's all about the number one, affordability, crime for sure, but it's also about how livable your local community is. And those quality of life pieces don't get talked about a lot. Like, what is your local park like now? What is we do hear about sanitation complaints that rises up pretty fast. But those pieces that make it comfortable to live here so that you can be part of that neighborhood that you worked your whole life and contributed to your whole life. And by the way, let's not forget about the tax coffers to the city and state. And let's not forget about what that economic stimulus means to the small businesses in those communities. Because who shops in those small businesses? A lot of older people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, you had once talked to me in the past about energy cost concerns as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is. But, the city doesn't really have as much control. The
Right.
state does.
Right.
And I'm glad you brought that up because right now we're hoping that Governor Hochul signs a bill for utility protection. So we're hoping that that goes through.
Yeah. Okay, Beth, it was fascinating. The poll coming out is this it now for the poll from between now and election day? That was
That's
it,
for
right?
us.
That was a great job that you guys did. Thank you for coming on to talk more
Thank
about
you.
that poll. And you can find it. It's on the website, right? AARP.
Absolutely.
And we have a link to it. And Henry did a great story on it with that poll yesterday as well. So don't forget, okay, just to recap, Thursday, sitting down with Zohran Mamdani, and I want to hear from you. Bring your questions directly to him. And the debate, the second and final mayoral debate will air on New York 1. They are taking down their firewall so you can watch it. And it's the second and final debate. So make sure you tune in tomorrow night for that, followed by the interview with Zohran Mamdani. And then next week, we'll talk more about what's going on in New Jersey. But that'll do it for now. I'm Dan Mannarino. We'll see you tomorrow, okay?